David, today's very special because we have one of my favorite writers in the world, a very good friend of mine who worked on Raymond for how many years was it?
2 seasons.
2 seasons. That's because he was busy. He was getting out of his day job, which was working on The Simpsons.
Not familiar with that show.
Which he ran for how many years?
I ran the show for 4 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And influenced Matt Selman and the people who came after him, who really looked up to him. But no one looks up to him more than me. This is my favorite, Mike Scully.
Let's spill the beans, chew the fat, food for thought, jokes on tap. Talking with our mouths full, having fun. A piece of cake and humble pie, serving up a slice of life. Leave the dressing on the side, it's naked lunch. Clothing optional.
Mike, is it true? Did you replace Conan O'Brien at the show?
No. But what did happen...
Nice having you.
Here's what happened. When I had heard stories about Conan in the room, like he was kind of legendary in the room for his style of pitching, that he would climb on top of on the writer's room table. And
never do that.
Pitch things. And
never stand up.
Yeah, he would do all this stuff.
Was he the monkey in the room? Like the Lou Schneider of The Simpsons?
He was the room monkey?
What happened was the very first day I was there was a table read.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to Conan. We shook hands across the table, and then the table read started. Just before it started, somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said to Conan, "You have a phone call."
Uh-huh.
And it sounds urgent. And so he left.
Uh-huh.
And then we did the table read. And
without him?
Without him,
okay.
Yeah. And later that day, we're back up in the room, and he hasn't come back to the room at all. And we're just kind of hoping that everything's okay in his life. Nothing went wrong. And, like writers, we're not actually doing anything to check on him. We're just hoping.
Nobody feels like getting up.
We've got jokes to write. Yeah. Turned out, and this was news to me. The other staff, he had done an audition show to replace Letterman in that 12:30 slot.
Yep.
And I think he had, and Jon Stewart had, and maybe Shandling.
Wow.
Maybe Gary Shandling. And the call was to tell Conan that NBC is going with him.
Amazing.
Which was a shocker. Do you remember that?
Of course, this unknown writer
how did
is
that
suddenly
happen?
getting a talk show.
And I think ultimately our showrunner at the time, David Merkin, was able to get a hold of him. But Conan said, "I've been told by NBC I can't go outside. I can't talk to people.
Oh.
So please."
And he's never gone outside since that day.
Yeah, we forgot to call him back.
His complexion says that.
Yeah. So he just had to lay low until they did on Jay Leno, where Jay officially introduced him to America.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
How did that work out?
Yeah. So that was my first day. I was so excited to work with Conan, and that was it.
That's a fantastic job. I'd say you're a good luck charm.
Yeah.
Mike Scully comes in, everything starts going good for you.
Guys, I have to go. I just got a call. I'm taking you over for the Joe Franklin show. Really? I would be a natural. Wouldn't I could have done that?
Joe Franklin?
Yeah, the Joe Franklin.
There's a Joe Franklin quality.
Yes,
I think. Matzahs by Strites, my friends.
I'm sort of half Aretha, half Joe Franklin. That's what I like how I think of myself. That's how I self-identify. When you're a Simpsons legend, a legendary Simpsons writer like yourself, is that like are there geeks everywhere who recognize you and have a million questions? Are you barraged with Simpsons fandom?
Once in a while. Actually, it happened over in London. Some company had come to America and made a commercial, but they wanted to feature the Simpsons writers in the commercial. I can't even remember what it was for.
Well, yeah.
So, and then we forgot about it. And then a year or two later, we're over in London traveling with the show. We got the cast and the writers, and we're doing panels, and the cast was doing live table reads.
Wow.
And people started coming up to me on the street, and I saw people pointing at me, and I didn't get it. And then finally somebody said, you're in a commercial on TV. Apparently it was still running. And we
gotta
didn't
see
know
this.
it. Yeah, I've never seen it. I've never seen it.
Is it on YouTube? Can we look this up, please? That's fantastic.
Yeah. I get recognized more, I think, from Parks and Rec. I'm in like 4 episodes, I think, as one of the idiots who asks questions at town meetings.
I love that.
And I just had it happen a couple months ago on a plane. We landed. I had glasses on, which I didn't have in the show. I had a hat on, jacket. I'm pulling my bag down from the overhead, and this guy says, "Parks and Rec, right?"
Oh my God!
And this is 10 years later. I've aged a little.
People are watching very closely.
Closely, yeah. So I had to do a picture with him in the aisle while people were waiting to get off.
Were you on set at the famous Patton Oswalt rant?
I was not on set when that happened, but I've watched every second of it.
Were you on the show at that time?
I can't remember if I was. I came and went. I was there like seasons 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah.
And then appeared on the show like seasons 3, 5, and 7 or something.
But for people who don't know,
it's spectacular.
Patton did a bit on the show where he was talking about Star Wars in the courtroom, right?
Right.
And they said, just do a take where you just go on about it like a super fan. And he goes, I can do that.
Yeah.
He made up a giant story on the spot.
Yeah, it's like 9 minutes long.
And I think that's on YouTube. I think you can see that.
I think the full take is just 9 minutes. And somebody told me, I'm not a Star Wars aficionado.
Yeah.
Somebody said in one of the movies, they used a big chunk of what he was pitching that should be the next Star Wars.
That is a super nerd. Yeah, that's just great. But back to you. How did you get the job on The Simpsons?
This was, let's see, I had been on some like multicam shows from like 86 to 93.
Some multicam shows. Maybe the most illustrious Don Knotts, Yakov Smirnoff a vehicle of all time, right?
Yes.
What a country. Am I right?
Yes. What a country. At the time I was writing jokes for Yakov's stand-up act.
Great.
He had just kind of blown up a little bit with those Miller Lite commercials.
Yep.
He did one of those.
Yep.
And so he needed more jokes. So I took my very, very surface knowledge of Russia and just wrote a lot of those. In Russia, we do this. And yep. But anyhow, so...
Do those jokes work now? I wonder. I can't imagine right now that Russia...
They do in the White House.
Yeah, exactly. So then he got offered a sitcom, and he wanted to have somebody in the room who knew his voice. And so he talked to the producers, and they paired me up with another writer who I didn't know. It's a practice called paper teaming.
Oh, so they can pay you half.
Yes.
Yes,
And
that's how I started.
Is it? Yeah. And by the way, it's frowned on by the WGA. But anyhow, they said, we only have enough money to hire one writer.
Yep.
We've narrowed it down to you two.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go in that room and see if you like each other and then come out and tell us and we'll make the deal.
And if you're willing to work for half,
Yes.
you're our man.
So we did. We went in the room and I said, I like you. He said, yeah, I like you too.
Hilarious.
Then we came out and made the deal, and that was my first staff job.
And is there a Yakov Smirnoff story that would surprise us?
That no one has?
Yes, exactly. We've
Oh,
gone
come
this
on,
far.
you've heard 'em all.
We're almost 200 episodes in with no Yakov Smirnoff story.
When I think I've heard them all.
But no, he's Irish.
This is the kind of journalistic expose that we do here.
And he's very good.
The fun of the show actually was once Don Knotts was brought in partway through the season. He wasn't in the original cast. They replaced an actor. And then we did one of those intros where the audience didn't know he was in the show.
Yeah.
Nobody had told anybody. So he's in the scene with his back to the audience, and the audience isn't paying attention to who that is. They just think it's an extra. So his first line, he like spins to camera, and I don't remember what the line was. And we thought, well, the audience will get a kick out of that, or they might see, maybe they'll know before it happens. But the place went. It was like Beatlemania. It's the closest
Limpet mania
to Beatle. Exactly.
He is beloved.
He is beloved. Yeah.
Well, by the way, isn't
It's
he
fantastic.
someone? I always think there's the people who are funny before they say a word.
He's got
Yeah.
the face.
And I like Jerry Stiller was that for me. They just made me laugh by being there.
I have a list of guys, and he's one. Tim Conway
Yes.
was one. Alice Ghostly Paul, like that. Tommy Smothers
Another.
blows me away.
Yes.
And Martin Short is
Undeniable.
the guy now. Is the second he
Maybe
walks out.
I've always said that if you put all the funniest people in the world in one room, he might be the funniest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I heard
Absolutely.
you on a podcast talking about Don Knotts, and it sounds like he was a good guy. I maybe because again, he's sort of like like on Mount Rushmore of sitcoms to me. But was he a good person?
Oh, he was wonderful. And in between scenes, people were kind of afraid, I guess, to go over and talk to him or something. Or he was a little frail at that point. It was nearing the end of his career. He had troubles with his eyes, and but I'd go sit and talk to him about like the Ghost in Mr. Chicken, and I always talked to him about his movies.
The incredible Mr. Limpet.
Limpet, yeah. And he would give show business advice to me, like, because he knew I was young and starting out, about never quit one job until you have the next one lined up.
He was your dad.
That's what my dad would say.
Yes.
Yes.
He was my dad without the beatings.
He wanted to beat
He
you, but he just didn't have the.
Yeah, it was a blast working with him. And I still have hanging in my house, I have a signed Ghost and Mr. Chicken poster.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
How great.
And
Yeah,
and doing that got you to The Simpsons?
Not right away. Yeah, it's pretty much a direct line. I did a show in between called Out of This World, starring Donna Pescow and Doug McClure from The Virginian.
Okay.
A very funny show.
Yes, a very funny show. It was I grabbed it because it was a job, and it was I had only been on one show, and figure, all right, this could last a season. I'll get a season here, and I had my first kid on the way, so got there anyway. Flip to we're cutting the cake for the 100th episode, and I'm still there.
Wow. That really was 100 episodes? Out
yeah.
of this world?
Yes, there's 100 episodes.
Amazing.
And I wound up running the show accidentally, even though it was only my second job, because the showrunner, the guy who was running it, came to us one day, came to the writing staff, and just said, and apparently he had been having a fight with this non-writing executive producer who actually owned the show, and said, listen, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, but if anyone asks you where I am, you don't know. But I'm coming to say goodbye to you because I've enjoyed working with all of you, but I will never be back here again. So,
Do you know what happened?
so I don't know what the big falling out was, but anyhow, like the next day comes and the guy's gone. The guy who is in charge of the whole show comes to the writer's room. And, anybody know where John is? And like the worst acting in the world from writers. You just we're all just kind of no, John. No, it's probably just running late. Could be car trouble. It was just we're terrible at hiding this secret.
He didn't tell us we don't know, but we don't know.
And then Jay Leno announced that he's the next guy.
And then, sure enough, he pulled me aside into his office and said, "How'd you like to run the show?"
Wow.
And I said, I'm only I was a staff writer on the previous show.
Yeah.
I was a story editor here. And he said, I think you can do it. And so what I didn't realize, he could smell how eager I was to learn like that. He changed my title to supervising producer, but left my money as story editor.
Of course. Wow.
Did you not have an agent at this time?
I did. And she just said, take the deal. You want the experience.
Look, not stupid. You
Yeah.
go for
Yeah.
someone you recognize the talent.
Yeah.
They're young and eager, and you don't have to pay them as much because, punish for caring.
Yeah.
Right? Punish for caring.
But I did. But I learned a lot
Yes, you did.
in relative obscurity because people
But-
weren't really familiar with the show.
Listen, kids, if you're listening, it may seem like Mike was taken advantage of, but he did learn. He got, you can't get the king's ransom on your first job. You can't expect. A lot of young people expect to be treated royally at the beginning. You got to work your way up.
Yeah.
There is the taking advantage part, which nobody tries to be taken advantage of.
No, but that's what I'm doing on this podcast.
Yes, you're taking advantage.
I'm taking advantage of.
Look at all the meals you get.
Exactly.
They actually made me pay to be on this podcast today. So.
Pay to play, baby.
I'm not stupid.
Is Out of This World enough to get you to The Simpsons, or was it one more?
There was one more. There was a show called Top of the Heap on the Fox network.
These
Only
sound
thing
like,
bigger than Out of This World. It's not like he's thinking fake TV
like he's
channel.
making it up. Yeah.
It starred Joe Bologna, who I loved in My Favorite Year.
Phenomenal.
And hated,
not
and hated on Top of the Heap. No, he was, can I say, roaring asshole?
Wow. We're today on Burning
By
Bridges.
the way, the last person to say that was Renee Taylor, I believe.
Did he's gone, right?
He's gone.
Well, say whatever you want.
But playing his son on the show was a pre-Friends Matt LeBlanc.
Ah.
A nice guy.
A very nice guy who Joe just kind of screwed with his head endlessly. Like if we cut a line from a show, I mean, sometimes you cut a script down just for timing. After a run through, the show's too long, we got to cut some stuff. And Joe would tell Matt, you know why they cut that line, right? Because you did it wrong. Like he would just mess with his head.
A lovely fella.
Yes.
Wow.
So after that show was canceled, it was one very quick. So we were having so much trouble coming up with stories, and it's a brand new show, and we can't come up with any stories. One day, the showrunner brings in the Sanford and Son story Bible, because Top of the Heap is about a father and son, and they're kind of like scamming to make money and
So we'll take something from that.
He gets Sanford. He goes, everybody go through the Sanford and Son story Bible and see if you got anything that we can use.
Wow.
On the show. Yes, so it's like I remember like looking through it, like, oh, Fred and Rollo accidentally make a porn movie. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, and that
You know how we did Raymond? We went through the I Dream of Jeannie story by
because that's the show, isn't it, where he literally said, Red Fox said, "Bring me my Jews back."
I think it was his variety show that he did that. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Was
it's
that right?
it's okay. It's an excellent story.
Oh.
So who gets how do you get the call to go over and meet the Simpsons people?
Do you write a spec Simpsons?
I had written I had 2 spec scripts at the time, back before the trend of writing spec pilots. You would just write specs of existing shows.
Right.
So I had a Seinfeld, and I had what I believe was the first spec Larry Sanders on the market, because the show had just been on 1 year.
Right.
And those got me the meeting with Gracie Films.
Ah.
And from there, they sent me over to David Merkin, who was running the show at the time, and Dave hired me.
Yeah.
And 28 years later.
Probably better than writing a spec Simpsons is writing a spec something else, because when you write a spec script for the show you want to be on, they know the show better than anyone. And so they'd rather see something that they don't know as well.
Yeah. And they also, I think when you're running the show, you see the show differently. You view it through a different lens than the audience does.
It's true.
So somebody could write a great Simpsons spec script, and we might read and go, it's way off. Like the tone is just off. It doesn't sound like that.
And they don't know, to be fair, they don't know which way the show is actually going.
Yes. Yeah.
They're not in the room with you.
Yeah.
So they don't know how you're thinking or what you want for the show now.
Yeah.
They only know what the show has been.
Yeah, I don't envy young writers now having to try write the spec pilot.
I can't imagine.
A good pilot is hard to write no matter how many years
Yeah.
you've been doing this. And to expect people to do it right out of the gate, and they want two.
Yeah. There's another point that makes it harder. There's no sitcoms.
Well, there's that.
They're not coming back. I mean, you actually are working on one.
Not right now.
Done?
Which one?
Well, last time we met, you told me you were working on something. I don't know what's the status of that.
Oh,
show.
the status is the show is still on, but it was a show my wife and I created, but we are not there.
Because you don't want to be there, or because there's a crazy person who said,
The second one.
yeah. I understand. We don't have to get into it. But
The crazy person could be anybody.
How did you two become friends? Because it's unusual in the history of Raymond that you brought in a superstar. It's like one of the only major baseball trades you ever made is bringing Mike over to be a part of your team for.
well, he was fantastic. I remember, and I think you were looking for, I don't know, part-time work.
I actually remember the phone call from you. I had just finished up like 7 episodes of a show that would be canceled in 4.
And by the way, the last 3 were the best.
Yeah.
scripts, I think.
That really is sitcom.
It was called The Pits. It was on Fox. And in my head, I was like, all right, I'm probably go back to The Simpsons. It's home. It's my comfort zone.
Right.
And you called about would I ever be interested, because I was a fan of the show, and would I ever be interested in coming over there? And it did. It caught my eye as one of the few shows that I genuinely loved as a fan.
Thanks.
And then you were very honest with me. You said, because I got to tell you, he goes, if you're serious about coming over here, and you were trying to tell me, think it over, because if you're serious about coming over here, I'm going to have to fight for you. And I said, why? And that you had already run my name by the network, and they called me, oh, isn't he Cartoon Boy?
Because you worked on The Simpsons.
Yes.
I mean, that's idiocy. I was the only reason I could actually say that to you, because I was saying at the same time, it's insanity that this is what we're up against.
Yeah, and that was the first time I didn't know that writers could be typecast by the types of shows you do.
That's insane, though.
So,
I mean, The Simpsons is literally more realistic than many live action shows.
Yeah.
So
Some
anyway,
episodes, not all.
We were thrilled to have you. You were always a joy and a pleasure, and I wish we could do more together.
But can I ask, what was your experience? Because I wrote a book about showrunners and watched Phil at work and was kind of amazed by it. Was the greatest show in history that was also almost an efficiently run gem factory. It's like they made these great episodes time after time, but they did not. I was at the same time hanging around friends and seeing them go till 3 a.m. and kill themselves. And it seems like Phil or those people in that room figured something out.
I'm very lazy.
Yeah.
What was your perspective?
No, well, it was at that time when pretty much every show was there till at least midnight, but it was very common to 2, 3, 4 a.m. You'd hear a show, and there were showrunners that believed that's when the magic happens.
Never happened.
And then
I think it happened.
Yeah, I get to Raymond, and it's the complete opposite. I think every day we were out normally 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
And that's with a nice
And
lunch.
I had a long drive home, so it kind of pissed me off because right in the middle of traffic, at least at 2 a.m, there's nobody else out there.
Yeah, fuck you, Phil. That was really rude.
But you're going the opposite way.
Yes, that's true. No, it was to me.
Dinner at home is where the stories were coming from.
Yeah.
Also,
and it just proved you can do a quality show and have a normal life at the same time. that it's not mutually exclusive. And that's, was a big takeaway for me from that show. And I would spread the word like around to other writers. It's happening at Raymond. I've been in the room.
I'm so glad that's part of the legacy, is that you could, first of all, treat people nicely, and second of all, get your work done in regular normal day hours.
Yeah. And I think part of your mindset was, like on other shows, if you were there late at night, the showrunner would go, come on, it's 1 a.m. Let's get this thing. We got to get out here like that. On Raymond, it was the same speech, but you were getting it around 3:30 in the afternoon. Come on, it's 3:30 in the afternoon.
Make the speech earlier is the lesson. But we did procrastinate just like every other show.
Totally.
We'd futz around until lunch.
Yeah. But you were...
But a lot of times what were we doing? We were seemingly wasting time by talking about what was happening to us in our real life at home. Yeah. And then usually around lunch, one of us would hit ourselves in the head and go, hey, wait a minute.
Phil would get, if you were telling a story of like something that had happened, say over the weekend with your family, between you and your kids or you and your wife, or an argument or something like that, there's a point at a certain point on most shows, you would just be telling a funny story to the room, and then it would be all right, let's get to work. When you're doing it with Phil, what it took me a while to learn, at a certain point in the story, there's kind of a twinkle in his eye that pops up. And then I realized, this is going to wind up on the show.
That's right. That's right. But that's I think one of the keys to that success of that show was that it was relatable to people.
Absolutely. That's what my wife and I loved about it, just watching it week in, week out. There were literal arguments on there that we had, and you think you're the only one that has this argument.
No, but we get, I always say, we get letters from Sri Lanka. That's my mother.
That's, exactly.
But The Simpsons, does it so masterfully as well, and they're working in the Cartoon Boy format, which is absolutely amazing. They still, after 35 years, can crank out absolutely stunning work.
Yeah, it's and I think the show has gone through a little bit of a renaissance the last few years. Under Matt Selman and Al Jean. Yeah. And I think Selman's kind of doing it now, where they're experimenting with the form and telling, some, stories. They did a two-parter a couple of years ago, and they're just trying different things, and they're willing to take that chance. It might work, it might not work. And I always admire that.
The Christmas one this year was an hour long. Yeah. Did you see it?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was great.
Made you cry.
Yeah.
Like that never happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that they allowed it, because I know there's hard and fast rules on that show.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was incredible.
Yeah. No, it was really well done.
Without sacrificing any of the tenets of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a kick to watch. And there's a whole new generation of writers on the show now too.
And it's well past profitability in syndication, right? Because the syndication wants a certain number of episodes, but once you have too many, it starts to literally lose value because there's too many.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they don't care. It's just, it seems like it might never end.
It's possible. I don't think there's a president. Nobody wants to be the president of Fox who canceled The Simpsons.
Right.
I think they're hoping when it ends, it just kind of goes away on its own, somehow magically.
Commits series.
That maybe Jim Brooks will
suicide.
do it like what he did with Mary Tyler Moore. He'll say, we're
that's
done.
Enough.
We're done now. Yeah, that's enough.
But it looks like no end in sight.
Yeah, not that I can see.
It seems like, because it's a cartoon, that it could run forever.
Yeah.
And look at SNL.
Yeah. And the crazy,
as long as cast changes, right, you can go forever. It's the format. It's its own format.
Yeah. And when I got there near the end of season 4. And I remember thinking, God, if I could just ride this out a couple of seasons, I'd make it to the end. Because at that time, if you ran 5 to 7 years, you had a good run for a network. half hour.
Right,
Absolutely.
100 episodes was it?
Yeah.
Of course,
And I
which
thought
is all you need for syndication.
Yeah. And we used to talk a lot about the series finale. It was, and this, I'm going, like I said, I'm talking like season 5, 6, 7. Like, remember, everybody should be thinking about a finale. It's going to come,
Wow.
and we got to be ready when it does.
Yeah.
And then the last time I remember hearing the conversation, we got up to like around season 10, and then thought that was going to be the end. There were conversations where I think we're running on fumes now, and we got to figure a way out of this. And then we decided to do 11 and 12, and I can't remember what the reason was to keep it going, but we just decided to plunge on. And I don't recall the conversation ever happening again of how do we end this thing. I think the feeling is we'll figure something out when the time comes, or they will. I won't be there.
But it's still the simplest of premises, right?
Yeah.
Which gives you the longevity. In other words, if they were aliens from outer space,
Yeah.
there's a limit to that premise, because every single episode is the neighbors can't find out we're from outer space.
Right.
But they are a regular family in a real town that over time you've gotten to populate with other believable characters that you could do an episode with any one of them.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah. And we've gotten to feature, there's probably 300 characters that have come through that show, maybe more.
Do you know how amazing that is? To have hundreds of characters that are not just stick drawings.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
The trick is always when we feature one of the supporting characters
Yeah.
and have it be about them is figuring out how to get one or more of the Simpsons into their story.
Right.
That's always the tricky part for us.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like we didn't need the Simpsons in this episode.
Sure.
But it definitely opens the show up creatively, and you can take all kinds of wild swings, and because these are characters that don't have elaborate backstories, so you can suddenly
So you
make
build
up
them.
Yeah, exactly.
It must be so much fun.
It is. It's terrifying at first when you join as a writer. I'll never forget like starting on the show.
But you can draw from real life. You can
Yeah.
say, I had this neighbor who was like this, and then put it in.
Oh yeah. I've done tons of stuff on the show from my real life. Like when Bart got caught shoplifting, that was based on me getting caught shoplifting
Great.
when I was a kid. And we did one just a couple of years ago. I wrote it as a freelance about my brother and I getting our mother this horrible birthday present because we had saved up money. Let's get mom something really, really nice this year. And we went into the store and we found something that we liked better for ourselves. And then we rationalized, well, we would still have enough money left over to get her a present.
That's so good.
And we bought her
The scarf.
Worst
That
kid.
scarf.
Oh, I would kill if I would be redeemed if it was a scarf. We bought her an ironing board cover.
Oh my God.
Isn't that
It's like,
romantic?
oh
she's
my God.
ironing all the time, She seems to love it.
For us.
What did Bart buy?
That's what we did in the show.
You did it.
We did the ironing board cover. It was Bart and Lisa.
And what was Marge's reaction?
She tried to be a good sport about it in
Oh.
front of them. And then they overheard her telling Flanders she was kind of disappointed
Oh.
that that's how her kids see her.
Oh my God. What
Yeah.
a great story.
Yeah.
Me and the boys, just me and the boys.
I know you as one of a very big music fan.
Yes.
You know, you were on our Peter Wolf episode. You wrote a doc.
Oh, yeah.
You made a documentary that I think is bigger than The Last Waltz about NRBQ, a band.
Bigger than the last.
Well, it's bigger. The celluloid is the videotape was bigger. But NRBQ, one of my favorite groups of all time. How much did there's been a lot of music love and musicians pushed onto The Simpsons, and there's a sort of love affair back and forth there. Did you have anything to do with bringing any of the musicians into the world?
Yeah. When I was there, we did one episode where Homer goes to rock and roll fantasy camp. And we had Well, I'll tell you how it started. First of all, I was driving to work one day. I always had the first act of the show laid out on a index card on the board, and it was Homer does the responsible thing after a night of drinking at Moe's. He takes a cab home, and while he's taking the cab home, what he doesn't realize is remember the HBO show Taxi Cab Confessions? Yes. He doesn't know that's what he's on. So he's drunk and he's talking to the cabbie and how, like, you know, marriage can ruin your life, and you give up your dreams, and you know, and all this stuff. And then the family winds up watching the show because Homer was drunk. He's watching it with them, having no idea where it's going. So he's saying this stuff about his family, these horrible things.
Oh my God! And
they see it, and I always had that first act.
Yeah. It's such a great way to get into the story.
Didn't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
For 2 years. And the card started to turn yellow on the board because I didn't want the rest of the show to be Homer apologizing. I think that's boring. And then one day I'm driving to work. I'm listening to Howard Stern. He has on Leslie West, the guitar player for the band Mountain.
Okay.
Big hit Mississippi Queen.
Yeah.
Leslie West is on there to promote this thing he's starting called Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp.
Oh, God.
And he's got the guys from Cheap Trick and Alice Cooper, and he named a few of the other people that were going to be part of this. And it's just like baseball fantasy camp, but with
by the
rock
way,
stars.
Started by a friend of mine who was the same guy who promoted the Monkees comeback tour, Ringo's beginning with the All-Star Band, David Fishoff, an Orthodox kosher Jew who brought us Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp.
Yeah. And I don't know if he was involved with the Leslie West version, but I
believe he was.
Yeah. And it was like right then, instantly I had it. I said, what if Homer had this dream of one day being like a rock star in a band?
Yeah.
But because he got married and had kids and got a job to take care of his family, he gave up all of his dreams. And
that you could put into the confession. Yeah.
Yeah. Marge has the point. It's like, your father did actually give up a lot for us. And instead of them being mad, they turn it and want to give him a surprise gift.
Great.
They take their vacation fund and book him for a week at Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. I had started writing, the first draft of the script, I was actually writing a lot of the people that were already doing Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. And then I got a call one day through Denise Surcott, who works for Gracie Films. She comes out of the music business. She got a call saying, hey, the Stones are going out on tour next year. And they're wondering if there's something they could do with the show to coincide with the tour. All of a sudden...
That's a good call.
Yeah, that's a good call. And so all of a sudden, like, bye, Leslie West.
Right. Upgrade.
Oh, great. And we wound up getting Mick and Keith.
Oh, my God.
Tom Petty.
Oh, my God.
Elvis Costello.
Jesus. All in one episode.
All in one episode, yeah.
They all came to the studio to record.
Not at the same time, but they all recorded in person.
What was that like?
Oh, man, it was fucking heaven. Like, first of all, the geek that I am, I brought a guitar with me to try to get each one to sign, not thinking the question that each one would ask when you put a guitar in. Like, oh, you play?
Oh,
no, I don't. I had between.
I like souvenirs.
So, and Lenny Kravitz was also in it, and Brian Setzer.
This is amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a great time.
Was that the only time Mick was on?
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So that's the episode.
That's the episode, yeah. And it made me totally understand. Remember the years where he wanted to be an actor. He was doing movies.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And
I saw Free Jack. I'm the
one. But, the riff between him and Keith sometimes is you're not into the music anymore, And I kind of got it. Like, he has real comedy chops.
He was great on the Oscars.
Yeah.
He's great.
By the way, great on SNL whenever he's on.
Yeah.
Hysterical.
Hysterical.
And self-effacing and
you don't have to tell him how to say it. You don't have to direct him. He knows where the joke is.
And Mulaney's bit about trying to pitch jokes to Jagger.
Amazing.
And you know, the
Yeah.
not
Yes.
funny.
Not
The not funny
funny
is one of the greatest bits of all time.
and
Yeah.
how did Keith come at the same time?
They came separate.
I am not surprised.
I got a call from one of their managers to set up that Keith would come. There had to be 3 weeks space
What?
between them, and she explained to me. She goes, it's not that they hate each other or anything like that. She goes, they're best friends for lives. They would be the first one in a crisis. They'll be the first one there to help the other one out.
Okay.
But they like their time apart, but they both like the same hotel in LA. So they didn't want to bump into each other accidentally.
And it
So
has
there's-
to be 3 weeks to be safe?
That's what I was told.
I got
So-
caught in the middle of their relationship. I wrote liner notes for 40 Licks, which is one of their big
Right,
anthologies. And I got mixed notes. He was my conduit, and he would go, David, if you could take out the knighthood reference, because he goes, it will break up the band. And also he goes Keith counted lines and there's 2 more about me than about him. So if you could balance that out for us. Also, David, I did one phrase of Yiddish. I think I called myself the Stones Schlepper or something in these notes. He goes, if you could remove the Yiddish as it's going to 14 Arab nations, which I did all of those.
No, but they were a blast. And Mick, too quick. Tell me if I'm going too long.
No, these are
All
great.
right. Keith's, when you have a guest star on the show, we always there's a contract rider of anything they want, to eat or anything like that. And we always ask, we want to make sure, because they get paid scale to do the show.
Yeah.
You don't do The Simpsons to make money. I asked, is there anything, Keith would like, when he comes to record? And the request was a bottle of vodka and a bottle of Orange Crush.
He didn't mix them, did he? Oh, God.
I'm nodding my head, yes. Yes, he did. And I said, okay, any food spread? Nope. So that's
like a teenager who's drinking for the first time.
Yes, yeah.
It helps when you're doing your blood transfusions to have that mix of 2 things.
Of everything I've learned today, that's the...
You and Keith, did you get to bring up, I'm trying to remember the timing of this, but I always thought it was amazing when he made his Chuck Berry movie.
Oh, yeah.
That his bass, Hello Rock and Roll, a great movie.
Love it.
Directed by Taylor
Yes,
Hackford.
love it.
His bass player is Joey Spampanato from NRBQ, your blessed band. Did that come up at the time?
Yeah, we talked about it then, and then later on when I did the NRBQ thing, I was able to get Keith to talk about it. His manager called me up and she said he's out in his backyard in Connecticut. He's interviewing for one thing right now. She said he'll do your NRBQ thing if you're ready to go right after he's done with this. I said, let's do it. So I just interviewed him over the phone. I gave her the questions and she fed the questions to him, and he was great. It's on YouTube. You can find.
That's great.
Keith
How
Richards
did
talking-
you get an NRBQ? For people who don't know, originally the New Rhythm and Blues Quartet.
Right.
I went to a school in Connecticut, and in the exact town where Al Anderson, one of the great earlier in no longer, but was the guitar god when I was loving NRBQ. How did you manage to take this band, famously obscure, never the biggest of sellers, and you managed to get them? You did something for TV about them, and I'm not sure it went that well for in terms of the broadcast ratings. But tell us the story of how you got NRBQ on TV.
Oh, for the documentary, I had been called over for a meeting at VH1, and they wanted me. They were trying to do an animated show over at VH1, and they wanted me to direct Rob Reiner in a voiceover session.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'll do it on one condition. And I instantly pitched this show to them about, and I said it was a pilot for a series called Hidden Treasures of Rock and Roll. And it's kind of the bands that bands like.
Yeah.
And they said, we'll do that.
Wow.
And so that's how I got the money.
Time.
Yes, exactly.
It's never that simple at VH1. I worked some at VH1. I'm sure it didn't go that easily.
Well, it did initially. And
that
then
sounds easy.
It took me about a year or more to get the whole thing done, maybe about a year and a half. And at that time, when I pitched it, Bonnie Raitt was kind of the prototype VH1 artist, and she had covered NRBQ on some of her albums.
Me and the Boys.
Yeah, Me and the Boys and Green Lights. And,
Yep.
So anyhow, at that time, so flash to a year and a half later, I come back and I decide I'm going to deliver the tape in person, the finished tape of the thing. I go into the offices. There is nobody there that I knew from the first meeting. Yeah. And I said, but it's like that Bobcat Goldthwait thing about, I lost my job. Like, well, I didn't lose it. I know where it is. It's just when I go there now, other people are doing it. But I walk in and I'm going to all the same offices, and there's new people in each office. And I finally said, I've got this tape here. I was making a documentary and we made a deal in this room. No idea what I was talking about. And they just said, well, they go, I guess it's yours. You can keep it.
Oh,
so
this might be the difficult part that you're talking about.
Yes, yes, that would be the difficult part.
Because until then, it was going well.
It was going well. So then we ultimately wound up selling it. I was trying to sell it all over town, and
literally door to door.
Yes, yeah. And we sold it to A&E, which at that time was still a Arts and Entertainment Network, and they put it on a show. They put it on at the prime rock and roll time of Sunday morning at 8 a.m. On a show called Breakfast with the Arts, is where it ultimately wound up. And then they brought the band in to fill out like another hour afterward. So I don't know who saw it or not, but it's in sections on YouTube.
I did see it. I got a cassette from somebody. Maybe I bought one from you on the side of the road, but I did get to see it.
David
which
sees everything.
I did, because I love that band.
Yeah. And a lot of great people gave testimonials, like Peter Buck and Mike Mills from REM, Elvis Costello, Bonnie, Drew Carey, who's a big fan of Diedrich Bader, just people, Penn and Teller, all like people I would see at shows.
Yeah.
And they all wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And so, it was a lot of fun. And then getting Keith. And came so close to Paul McCartney. Like 3 different times we had sessions scheduled that wound up being canceled. But he apparently was a fan. And so that would have been great to get Paul.
That would have got you like a noontime slot.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite showbiz story in all your years?
Oh, geez.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Ask something else and come back.
Okay, I'll ask one while you're thinking about that.
I'm paying attention
You
to that
worked,
one.
you worked with a comedian who I always think of when someone is not your type of comedy and you think they're great, they're great. And there was a guy named Robert Schimmel who I was a big fan of. Can you tell me the story of how you worked with Robert and nearly made him this? I kind of think he could have been a massive, almost of a different era kind of, a little bit of that All in the Family, because he was an edgier kind of guy.
Yes.
Did Kirschenbaum work on that too?
No.
Was there a second show? Did he do?
There definitely wasn't a second one. I don't think he had done one.
I think he died on the first one, so I know there wasn't a second one.
Yeah, I can't remember where I saw him at first. It might have been one of those like Comedy Central half-hour comedy things. Yeah. And I just thought he was hilarious and so different than everyone else out there.
Yeah.
And that he was older too and had kids. And I loved his voice. And so we wound up meeting and we hit it off and we sold a pilot to Fox, wrote it and shot. And it was a tough shoot. We had like the run through the night before we're shooting the pilot, and the network president hates it. I mean, really hates it, and says, I hate this.
How could you tell he hated it?
So I'm trying to make the case of why I think America will love this guy and connect with the show and the family and us. And the president gets up and walks away. He goes, "What can I say?" He goes, "I guess we're just the Arabs and the Jews on this one."
Whoa.
And I said, "Which one am I?" And he didn't even turn his back. He said, "Anyone you want."
Oh, man.
Oh my God.
What network was this?
This is for Fox. Fox. The show got ordered to series, and unfortunately, Robert was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, God.
So ultimately, we never made it to air. He eventually went into remission, but Robert was one of those guys. He could find like we went to see him in Vegas while he was going through chemo. He was still touring.
Whoa.
And like under his suit, he had the, I think it's called like the portal or
Yes.
whatever they put it. And he had lost a lot of weight, but he had like a 20-minute chunk of material now about cancer. And he was excited about that. He goes, "I got 20 new minutes out of this." Which is a
kinda
real
dark.
comics mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he was, ironically, he ultimately beat the cancer, later had liver disease, beat that. And then a couple years later, I got a phone call telling me that he had died in a car accident out in Arizona.
I'm surprised that this is your favorite showbiz story.
No, we're still letting him wait. Here's my second pitch for your favorite showbiz story. I don't know what your story is, but I had a story with this guy. I got to ask Mel Gibson after the scandals to drop some Yiddish, and he did. And he was I quite enjoyed my experience with Mr. Gibson. He did. At the height of the scandals, I was in his office, and there was a cutout of Jesus, like a movie, like you would see in a movie theater lobby. There was the his Jesus movie. There was a big cutout, and he sort of was backing me into the door, telling me he really wanted to bond because he was under there was such bad PR going for him, and he had always been really well liked because he's actually could be very charming. And I knocked over Jesus in his office. And I always just thought the only thing worse would be if it caught fire when the Jew knocked into Jesus.
He put that in the movie.
Yeah. But how was your Complete Savages experience?
For some reason, I'm picturing you like nervously picking the
Like
Jesus
Woody Allen.
back up, like Woody Allen dusting him off.
Yeah, I'm sorry, excuse me. Yeah. Exactly. I was tempted. I'm sorry. Yeah, what was your experience with?
The holes were there already.
Working with Mel on Complete Savages, we actually had a lot of fun working together on that show. It was fun. He directed the pilot. This actually is one of my favorite stories because it shows you what an idiot I am. I had brought him around because he hadn't really worked in TV at all. So I brought him around to just show him like the stages. I think I brought him once to the Raymond stage, which, do you remember Brad's line?
What was it?
Brad Garrett walks up behind Mel. Mel didn't see him coming. Brad walks up behind him and looking down in that booming voice of Brad says, "Want to meet the world's tallest Jew?" And Mel, he laughed at that. And then took him around to a couple other sets. But anyway, so I'm telling Mel, so we're going to have 4 cameras on stage. It's not like movies, it's not, like a single camera thing. They're all going at the same time and you're watching the split on this thing. And I said, "Are you comfortable with that?" And he goes, "You know how many cameras I had for the battle scene in Braveheart? 18.
Wow.
I said, "Well, this will probably work then." The problem actually, Complete Savages, when we sold the show, ABC was they wanted to get back in their TGIF business, which is family-friendly Friday night shows. And then there was a change of regime. Literally the night we shot the pilot, we were waiting for the network president to come down to the stage. And we're like 15 minutes in and she hasn't come and no one's calling. And we finally call to see where she is. and it turned out she had been let go.
You've
which-
had these incredible things happen
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
These wild ups and downs.
Yeah.
How do you surf this business?
Oh, man.
Is it therapy? Is it stuff? I mean, to me, it seems like this stuff you shrug and you go on to the next thing. That's what you look like to me.
Yeah.
But is it harder than that?
For a while. But I mean, when something doesn't make sense, you know, because in the end, you want to believe, yeah, but if people like the show, they'll do it anyway. And then you realize there's all these other things that come into play. The new network president came in. Well, now he felt no attachment to this show.
Of course.
It wasn't his baby. It wasn't developed on his shift.
Yeah.
You're dead.
That happens a lot.
A lot, yes. They just feel no ownership of it.
Yes.
You can take credit for it. I don't care.
No,
But
gotta be.
and then it was done by a rival studio. We were doing it for ABC, but the
Yep.
studio was Universal.
Yep.
And at that time, Jeff Zucker was running Universal.
Yep.
And it was like the ABC president said, "You think I want to give Jeff Zucker a hit show?" It's like, I'm kind of hoping.
That was the plan.
Having that unique perspective, because I was writing about him at the time, it was amazing when Phil never, like at the moment where you were getting offered a lot of big deals and took maybe a big deal, you ended up sticking with your show. It's pretty uncommon in TV history that someone stays with the show they love.
Yes, yes. And I think more so at that time too, right? I mean, it was unusual to not.
It was
not leave.
It was a different world.
Yeah.
I mean, the people were offering tons of money to do a deal somewhere else because there was so much business.
Yeah.
That business isn't there anymore. It really isn't.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely
I mean,
right.
it could come back. I always think that if somebody wrote a great sitcoms would be back because the nature of show business is the hit is here now. Let's run over there and start imitating that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it just takes one, really.
I'm watching a network show that is really good now, and my wife and I just keep watching it because we were told to watch it, and I keep, how can this be so good on network TV right now? High
Potential.
You're right. I don't know if it splits a sitcom and a drama.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of a crime show, but it's brilliantly funny and
No,
really
it's
good.
it's a fun show.
What's it on?
It's
ABC.
on ABC, and then I guess on Hulu the next day.
Wow.
It's Caitlin Olsen from Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But the show, it's originally a French show, I think called High Intellectual Potential or something,
Yeah.
HIP. And then Drew Goddard, the screenwriter and writer, adapted the property, brought the IP over here.
Yeah.
And ABC bought it. And Drew's not running it. I forget who's running it now. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a fun show, and she's terrific.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you.
great. A network show that you go, wow, this is...
No, I love Abbott Elementary. And I think I look at it and I'm like, this is the business they used to be in on a routine basis.
Right.
Just shows that make you feel good, that
Yep.
are funny,
But the 4-camera show.
the 4-camera show.
That's what I
yeah.
want.
They seem to think the formula for doing them now is to find somebody who had success previously in the same format,
That's dumb.
like Reba.
But that's dumb because it's not it. I know the movie business has gone all IP. That's the only thing
Yeah.
that will bring someone to the theater is knowing the brand.
Yeah.
But the old adage, TV makes stars. Stars don't make TV.
Yep.
People discover the people they believe them as those characters. Why? Because there is no baggage from before.
Yeah.
We're not seeing a movie star. We're seeing someone who is this character, and that makes the show better.
No, I agree completely. I think they're making big mistakes. I think they underestimated the streamers. And
Boy, do you think?
The broadcast networks
Yeah.
thought, hey, that because I would say change your viewing experience.
Yeah.
That people are getting used to this viewing experience of no ads and stuff. And I know you can't do that, but you certainly have more ads than you need. When
Yes.
you were the only game in town, you kept pushing and taking
That's
more
right.
and more, where a half an hour show is really 20 minutes. I said, you're going to wind up going out of business that way.
But the streamers don't learn the lesson either.
No.
Because they've tried some sitcoms,
Yeah.
but made the same mistake that the networks made.
Yeah.
Just get a big star. That's all people care about.
Yeah.
It's not the case.
It's really
They'd
not.
like to see something that makes them laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's getting harder and harder to find, I think.
Yeah.
With an exception, and this is, I think Hacks is a show I love.
Yeah.
That makes me laugh out loud.
Right.
And I think they've got the emotion too. But the long gaps on a lot of the streaming shows in particular, I have to wait a year for 8 more of these.
That's right.
We'll just go back and rewatch. And it's a personal thing. I'm like, no, I did watch it. I enjoyed it. I'm not watching it again.
But I'm of the age now where I can go back and watch something from 10 years ago, having not one memory. I'm going back and watching Fargo. I started from season 1 with the Billy Bob Thornton
right.
one. So it's one of the best things ever on television. It's just so good. Do you ever watch it?
When it was first on, but
Do you remember it?
nope.
Here you go. I got a new show for you, Mike.
Well, I want to package you two to do a new sitcom called Mel with an exclamation point, like the comeback.
How much do we love Mike Scully? Thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
And come back anytime. I'm sure we didn't cover half the things on your paper there, David, did we?
Well, you didn't even give us one real Parks and Rec story, which my kids are going to be mad at me. So
Go ahead.
Please give us one.
This will be but this is it, Mike. Then you really got to get the hell
But
out
that
of here.
cast is amazing. Like the amount of talent,
Yes.
Between Adam Scott, if you think he started with Severance, no. If Rashida, Rob Lowe, who you had the idea, Rob, be pretty. I think that was a great pitch.
Be pretty. I actually remember when Rob came in the first day, because he came in somewhere in season 2, I think, Rob and Adam both. And Rob was coming in for the interview, and a lot of the women in the office randomly were extra dressed up that day. So and they were all talking about Rob Lowe's coming up, Rob. So the male, particularly the writer, is like, we'll see how pretty he is right once he's up close and without all the filters on the camera and the Vaseline, all the tricks they do. And he comes in for the meeting, and the writers are in the room like, oh my God, he's beautiful.
Gosh.
And I think too, for a show, I mean, it's a similarity to Raymond with Parks in terms of the dynamic there. When you have a nice person running the show and a sane person, and then on set, you have the same thing in the cast. You have an Amy Poehler on set.
She's fantastic.
On Parks, we had Mike Schur running the room. And it makes it just kind of a joyful place to be at work. Some shows you're escaping, you might be escaping the writer's room and go down to the stage, or vice versa. I don't want to be on the stage. I'm going to hide in the writer's room.
Right.
That there was no bad place to be
Nice.
on either of those shows.
I remember
It was
my
just
kids
fun.
were early and loved Parks and Rec the first year, and then I was doing some award show with Amy, and I just said, my kids love your show. And she's such a nice person.
Yeah.
And she goes, David, please tell them to stick with it because the second season's much better. She was not like a star, just like a nice human being.
Yeah. No, it was a great lesson having been there. I was there for half the first season, and they didn't get to do a pilot for the show because Amy was pregnant at the time. So they just went right into doing 6. And what they discovered was, because of Amy's kind of innate likability, and I think Greg Daniels described it as this glow that follows her.
Yeah.
Whereas she was kind of the butt of the joke in the first season. Like, everybody made fun of how much she cared about things and, that kind of stuff. And the adjustment now, it just made so much sense. We decided, let's not have people look at her that way. Let's have people think these are admirable qualities, and knowing she'll be the one to go too far, but she's the one who never forgets anybody's birthday, and instead of getting mad at her for it, just like, God, why I wish I was more like Leslie. No.
Right.
And then so the audience could feel like geez, I wish there was a Leslie Knope in real government. Somebody
By the
who
way,
cared that much.
I remember one of her character traits was she loved Joe Biden,
Yes. Yeah.
the vice president at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
That was great.
No, it was a fun show to do, and it was a good working experience. It was good to work with a whole different staff that I hadn't worked with before, so that was fun. A very young staff. I became very aware of my age on that show.
Yeah.
Because there was one night I was sitting there and I looked across the table at two of the writers. I added their ages together and I was still older.
Oh my God. Wow.
But it was cool because I was kind of like, wow, this is the next generation of creators and stuff coming up. So
And you were impressed by them.
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Well, thank you for coming in like Rob Lowe and dazzling us with your beauty and your charm.
And your youth.
Relatively
It was a
speaking.
pleasure to be here.
Naked Lunch is a podcast by Phil Rosenthal and David Wild. Theme song and music by Brad Paisley. Produced by Will Sterling and Ryan Tillotson. With video editing by Daniel Ferreira. And motion graphics by Ali Ahmed. Executive produced by Phil Rosenthal, David Wild, and our consulting journalist is Pamela Chellan. Thanks for listening to Naked Lunch, a Lucky Bastards production.